weather fan.
You know what, Kevin? My lower third now is cursed like your lower third, and I can't get it working. It's doing the same exact thing yours is doing.
Wow.
Once your lower third stops, it never returns.
You know, I've heard that. Men who turn 50 say that happens to them. When they're lower
Matthew, you may have
Ba-dum-bum. Beautiful.
Matthew, you may have 2 Stanley Cups, but I have one of these.
The heck is that? Oh, a Hershey's chocolate bar thing?
Hershey's chocolate Stanley Cup.
You know,
that's got to be one for the best of videotape that I'm doing, Kevin, right there. That was perfect. That was just perfect. That line. That was perfect. Once your lower third stops working, it never starts again.
Yeah.
So much for the deadline, folks.
Yeah. No. This makes the deadline more interesting.
We say that every year. There's always a bunch of trades that lead up to the deadline, and
right.
I think last year, I want to think that there was maybe 5 or 6 trades before the deadline.
There were definitely trades.
The only sad thing is like, you know, if you're looking at there's so many teams looking for defensemen, and if you look at the market now, like the best rentals are Petrie and Mahalik.
Yep.
Like, I mean, that's not exactly, you know,
4, 5, 6 defensemen tops, you know.
Yeah, no, that's right. You know, second pair.
We have Jamie McBain available. Anybody?
Yeah, right.
Which you would think, Kevin, that it would force NHL general managers to sort of think outside the box. That maybe, you know, guys with 1 year left in their deal, or guys who have bigger contracts, maybe there's actual possibility of the hockey deal going down because they can't get the rent-a-player. So now they may have to, you know, do something to move salary out.
Well, let's talk about this on a podcast.
Yeah, let's do that, because I agree completely with Mike
right.
about that.
If only we had a public forum to discuss this.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about it now. So what we'll do is introductions today, since Matt's no longer a guest.
Yeah. Mute Josh. He's
So
on the phone.
Mike?
Hold on 1 second. I'm just in the middle of a podcast.
Yeah. Don't mind us.
In an hour.
Sorry, I'm just in the middle of a podcast. Hopefully, the people who you're talking to understand that. It's great for getting credit card people off. Yep. Sorry, I'm just.
We actually got rid of someone at the door yesterday because I was on a podcast.
Very nice.
Yeah, someone showed up and I heard my wife said, "Well, we can't speak to you because my husband's on a podcast." He had no idea what the heck that.
Right. It's like, oh, whoa, man. Yeah, I'm so sorry. I'm out of here. I apologize. Somebody because it sounds so serious.
Hey, Kevin, you should write more articles on who's available, because I think you wrote an article yesterday and literally 2 of them were traded, you know, immediately after.
Within minutes. Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's do it. So it's gonna go. Mike is gonna introduce himself. Then it'll be Matt, followed by Kevin, then Josh. Okay, here we go. It's the
26th.
26th. It's Thursday. All right, here we go. So what? Time flies. All right. Hello, Hockey World. It's Thursday, February 26th, 2015.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Matthew Barry in Los Angeles.
I'm Kevin Allen of USA Today Sports.
Josh Schwimmer.
And I'm Eklund, and I like the name of the city where you're in. It's pretty cool. I'm Eklund in Pennsylvania, and I'm from HockeyBuzz.com, and this is the HockeyBuzzCast, which comes to you Monday through Friday, 1 o'clock Eastern Time, or whatever that equates to wherever you live. And we are the podcast that gets together to discuss what's going on in the hockey world, so you don't have to pay attention at all. And today we've got lots to talk about. We're going to get into the Central Division for sure. But first we have to talk about some trades that happened just yesterday. And really only it started about an hour and a half after the show and went for another hour and a half after that. And man, oh man, the trade deadline. Before we get into let's talk about the actual trades real fast, and then we'll get into the implications of this, and then we'll get into the Central Division, and then we'll discuss something else. But let's start here. The actual trades. The first trade that goes down is Winnick, which, if you remember, I actually said Winnick to Pittsburgh was something I was hearing that morning yesterday during the podcast. And it just made sense. It was one of those things that just made sense because this was they got the kind of player they needed, Kevin, without actually having to spend too much money at all.
Well, it really didn't spend any money. I mean, it was just an oddity that a very valuable role player, Winnick, would be making just over $1 million, and rookies get $1 million. So it really was just moving a guy off the roster and adding him in, and you get a guy who's been around the block, who knows what his role is, and actually is a fair goal scorer. Like you don't view him as a 20-goal scorer, but if you had to slot him up and play and move him into the second line, or he's more ideally suited, in my opinion, to be a third liner. But in a pinch, he knows where the net is. Like he can certainly play an offensive game. And the other thing about the reason coaches like him is the fact that he can play any kind of style you need him to play. He can play up tempo. He can play defensive. He is very much a pro's pro. And there were a lot of teams interested in him. And, they got a decent return. They got a couple of draft picks for him. I thought they actually did better on Winnick, speaking of the Maple Leafs, than they really did on Franzen and Santorelli. Like, I understood the logic of what they did. They felt like they traded 2 players so they could assure themselves they could get that first-round pick, which they wanted. But, if you talk to the GMs, they thought they would have done better had they, broken them up. And I would think that the Maple Leafs thought was we'd rather have the first-round pick than 2 second-round picks and a prospect. But anyway, I thought the Maple Leafs did fine on that, but it was a good acquisition. They achieved what they needed to do. They had no cap space. They got a guy who can help them in the postseason.
Mike, you happy with this deal?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Leafs did it pretty well, and I think Leaf fans are pretty happy. I mean, from the Pittsburgh point of view, the cap impact is $100,000. The Leafs take back Sill at $550. The Leafs pay $650 of Winnick's $1.3 million salary. So the increase is $100,000, and to get an impact depth forward who can penalty kill, who can play, who has played on all 4 lines for the Leafs this year, I think was a really good move by Jim Rutherford. For Toronto, they wanted 2 draft picks. They wanted a second-round pick. They wanted to get a second-round pick in 2015, but Pittsburgh, after trading their first for Perron, didn't want to trade their second this upcoming year, so they took the 2016 pick and added a 4th-round pick. And Toronto, I think, didn't hit it out of the park because this is a rent-a-player situation. But now with the 3 pending free agents, they got a first, a second, a 4th, and Brandon Leipzig, who is a pretty decent prospect. I think that Dave Nonis did a pretty good job. And one thing that Toronto has done, they have 4 days from now until the deadline, and now they can concentrate specifically, and I think this was the plan, get the deals that were supposed to happen out of the way. Now you have 4 days to negotiate deals potentially for guys like Lupul and Bozak and Polak. Those deals are not going to be easy to pull off, and I think the GM would have to devote a lot of his attention to those deals. And I think now that they've gotten the other deals out of the way, I mean, they may trade David Booth or Ole Jokinen, and those won't take a lot of time to consummate. But the other deals may take a little bit of negotiating back and forth with a number of teams. And now I think they've managed their time well, so they can concentrate on those.
I agree. Now, and then next up, Tlusty gets moved in the first of Carolina, obviously wanting to take off on the trade deadline and getting rid of their 2 biggest picks, 2 biggest players. Probably they still have some players to move, but they the first of their 2 moves. And Tlusty goes to Winnipeg, which had been rumored quite a bit. It wasn't a real surprise there. Winnipeg needed a player like that, and Paul Maurice had him before.
Right.
Twice. What were your first thoughts on this one, Matt?
I think it's a great deal for Winnipeg. I mean, it's a definite boost for them. They don't give up too much. They definitely have added to their core. It's a terrific pickup. And when that deal went down, I went, uh-oh, here we go.
Yeah.
And then you called me pretty much like half an hour later, and
Yeah.
you had heard that Sekera had been traded.
Yeah,
So
I heard LA was one of the possible teams, and we just went from, and I was calling you up and a couple other people to see what was going on. It was kind of interesting at that point.
Yeah, I mean, getting back to the Winnick deal, as I said, yesterday, he's a journeyman guy, and the fact that they got a second rounder for him is just mind-boggling to me. I think if you were dangling a second-round pick in 2016 to any GM, you couldn't have gotten more than Winnick.
It really is a good pick, and it's hard to think about now where we are, but it is when you think about it's going to be the second day of the draft, a Saturday, where in Nashville maybe, or where the draft's going to be in 2 years from now, which I'm not even sure where.
Buffalo.
Buffalo, right? Okay, Buffalo. And the first pick that that they have, they're going to have to give up for Winnick. It is a fascinating thing. And
what this tells us, Eck, is that the price point of a player is king. Because if you look at it, I think Tlusty is a better player than Winnick, but Tlusty is making close to $3 million, and Winnipeg took all that money in that deal. They only got a 3 and a 5 for Tlusty, who's younger, who's a better offensive player than Winnick is. But Winnick is making 1.3, and all the contending teams, they could fit 1.3 or at least half of 1.3 in there. So that's the reason why Toronto got a second-round pick and a fourth-round pick. And I think it encourages Toronto, even in the midst of a rebuild over the next couple of years, to go out and sell what they did with Mason Raymond last year and what they did with Santorelli and Winnick this year. Come here for a year, sell your wares.
It's kind of the Florida Panthers method of doing things for the last few years. They've been doing that.
They're buying draft picks, and it's a smart method to do.
Now, Kevin, have we seen the price? Have we seen the market set by these guys? Do you think?
Well, yes and no. And I'll say this: listening to Matt, it's amusing because when Tlusty was sold, my first thing is they didn't get enough for him. Like, he's a pretty skilled player, as we've talked about. He's essentially. We think of him as a 20-goal scorer, even though he hasn't really scored 20, but he has the skill of a 20-goal scorer. But yesterday, when I talked to general managers, like Matt's perspective of Winnick is that he's not as good as we are making him out to be, I think. But the NHL view of Winnick is he's better than, they would see him. I think if you ask them to compare Winnick and Tlusty, they would see him as more valuable. Winnick is more valuable. He can do more things to help them win. Now, that seems foreign to us because we like the Tlusty skill level. But yesterday when I called the GM and I said, I was surprised he only got a third and a sixth and a possible fifth. He goes, and this was an exact quote, "You realize he hasn't played well in 2 seasons." And I said, well, it's kind of a relative thing. He goes, no. He said the scouting reports I get on Tlusty are, he's been playing below average for 2 seasons. He said, and we've looked at him, but he said he just hasn't, he hasn't played up to his potential. So I think those kind of things, happen where, a guy that isn't playing up to his potential is sort of marked down, and a guy like Winnick who seems to play above his ability in terms of all that he can do. And as Mike pointed out, and this was a key factor, it was the price point as well. Winnick was more valuable because he didn't cost a lot. But I think there was a lot of talk yesterday about Bergenheim. What he went for had sort of established a gauge for that third line, fourth line player. So I think all of these will take into account. I mean, I'm certainly everybody's going to use that gauge, saying, hey, look, if Winnick went for this, if Tlusty went for this, then this guy is worth that. So
yeah, it's got to be.
And not only the fact that Matthew Perreault was out, but they put Blake Wheeler on the injured reserve yesterday, which made it even more important for Cheveldayoff to go out and add a forward. So, Tlusty can, in a pinch, he played a top 6 role for Carolina, and Maurice has been able to get the best out of him. He played, I think he played as a 19 and a 20-year-old for Maurice in Toronto when he first came up as a Leafs first-round pick, and he played for him in Carolina as well. Right. So he's familiar with the player. So the deal makes a lot of sense, and I think Winnipeg got a decent player who, as Kevin said, has not played well in the last couple of years, but they got him for pennies on the dollar. So I think it was a good deal.
Just going back, I never said that I thought that was a great deal for Winnipeg. I was stunned that that the GM said to me, what he did. Right. I mean, I knew that he had not played well this season, but his perspective was that he hasn't played well since the 48 game.
Right. Wow. All right, and then I think the maybe the most important trade of the day comes down right shortly after that, and again Carolina trying to get business done. Sekera who many people, and I just said, just suggested on yesterday's show, Mike has always had a sort of a lesser view of Sekera because he played in Buffalo at the time. He didn't look all that great, but I was watching him in Carolina the night before the trade, and the Flyers were joking around. They're like, yeah, it was really nice of them to trade these players right after they beat us, not right before. I talked to a couple of players yesterday because Sekera was a major factor in that game. Sekera looked really good against the Flyers. It looked like he was playing to get traded. It looked like he was ready to go. And then goes to what sounded like a little bit of a battle between maybe Chicago and Tampa and a couple other teams, but it ends up in L.A. And Matt, the question is, my thought on this trade, and I really want your opinion on it, is he's somewhere between Martinez and Voynov. Like he's right in the middle there. I think of him as is he Martinez or is he Voynov? But I think he's definitely a great fit for what they need.
I think he's a terrific fit, and I know a lot of people are saying the Kings overpaid. It was a first-round draft pick, but there are several factors here. Number one, if the Voynov situation doesn't work out, there are going to be teams who will happily pay a first-round draft pick plus a prospect to get a guy like Voynov. So Lombardi's got a win-win there. I mean, if you're looking at Edmonton, wouldn't you be creaming to get a guy like Voynov? Of course. Whether you want to give up a top 5 pick, I don't know, but Voynov is he's gonna fetch a lot during the offseason if the Kings decide not to keep him, and he's got a very inexpensive price compared to what everybody is going to get. Lombardi is a great gambler. He gambled on Gabrick last year, who was a UFA, and who knew if he was going to resign him or not, and he actually didn't sign him until July 1st when he got all the offers and had to reluctantly sign him to a 7-year deal.
Yeah.
The kid that went back, Roland McEwen, there's a lot of talk about that. I talked with the mayor a brief bit about him, and the interesting thing, and maybe Kevin, you can weigh in on this, is that he was at the World Juniors or the under 17s on the team, and then this year he didn't even get an invite. So that kind of raises a few red flags. They didn't give up their first round pick in Forbert. They didn't give up this kid Miller. So I think it was a terrific deal, and his agent Alan Walsh is out here, loves it out here, says Sekera is going to love it out here, and that's the Southern California lifestyle,
Sounds like he wants to resign there too.
I mean, if it's going to be reasonable, I mean, look, if Lombardi was willing to pay, Paul Martin $5 million a year, how many years ago, and during that whole free agent crop when he signed Willie Mitchell, he's easily going to shell out $6 million to keep Sekera. The biggest thing, and I don't think anybody has really talked about this, is the Kings getting Sekera kept him away from the Ducks, because that would have been a powerful, powerful move for the Ducks, who could have afforded him, had the assets and the first-round pick, and really could have trumped the Kings on this. So for Lombardi to pull the trigger on this was pretty shrewd.
It's a good move, Kevin.
Yeah, I love the move, and I'm a big fan of what Dean Lombardi does with that team, and when people criticize him, I always shout out on Twitter, Dean, show him your 2 championship rings, because he has really done an excellent job of keeping that team competitive, and it's tricky business, and the fact that they don't turn it on in the regular season, like, who cares? I mean, it works for them, whatever it is they're doing. I mean, look at this team now. And we talked about this the other day. I watched them against Detroit, and they made the Red Wings look puny. And the Red Wings, as we all know, can take it. They're not a physical team, but they can take whatever pounding that you throw at them. But the Kings just look like a really tough, big, physical group that they really are. And this is a classic case of, and Lou Lamoriello has done this for years in New Jersey, of taking your time, analyzing the marketplace, determining what your team really needs most of all, and getting the best possible guy for what you have available. And it got a little tricky at the end. I've been told that there were some concerns about the salary cap, that they had to go over it with a fine-tooth comb to make sure this was going to work. And at the end, the Tampa Bay Lightning really wanted Sekera. and I think they were bold, right to the very end, trying to get in. But the fact that Dean was willing to give up a first-round pick, and again, he was smart about it. Like, he's not risking the 2015 in case they don't make it. I mean, anything is possible. They could miss. He wouldn't want to be a lottery team and win Connor McDavid, and then have that go to. So what did he do? He had the pick where if they don't make the playoffs, it goes to 216. So I really liked the move. I think Sekera. I talked to a lot of GMs yesterday, and everybody thought he was playing well of late. And there were a lot of teams interested in him. And I think he is kind of a poor man's Voinov. I think he can fill that role. He's not as good as Voinov, in my opinion. But, Voinov is no good. He's dead to them, right now. I mean, it doesn't matter how good he is. He's not playing.
Well, I think the secret little thing below all this that's hidden under the ground, like you were saying about Tampa, which, I heard as well, and is that Tampa must have been offering up Tampa has 2 first-round picks, remember. So Tampa must have been offering up one of their first-round picks in this deal, I think, to get Sekera, which makes you it just when you think where the price ended up. They've got 2 picks. They've got their pick, and they've got another pick.
They got the Rangers pick.
The Rangers pick, right? So they've got 2 picks that aren't going to be lottery picks. So they've got where the Kings were smart about how they protected this. They did the old NBA move basically with this pick, and made it so it's not a lottery pick. If it's a lottery pick, it goes to next year, right?
I was going to say that isn't this like one of the first instances that we've had a lottery protected first round pick in a hockey deal? I mean, that is sort of an NBA moniker of having this was basically a lottery protected first round pick in this deal.
Yeah, but not making the playoffs. It's just a different way of saying it, right? So you call it a lottery pick if you want to.
And what we do know is that if the Kings are more likely, just by their history, to have a higher pick than the Tampa Bay Lightning. I mean, if you look at I don't know whether Steve Yzerman offered a first round pick.
Yeah.
Maybe he did. Maybe he just felt that was too much. But even if he did, if you're the Carolina Hurricanes, you're thinking that the Kings, even this year or next year, are more likely to be a better pick, just because they generally don't, do all that well in the regular season. And Tampa Bay looks like they're going to be good for a while.
Right. I think that plays. That's why it feels as if if the Kings had to put that first round pick in there, it feels as if they were competing against another first round pick, which is not as good a first round pick, perhaps. That's what it felt like to me. That's just totally speculative, but there has been talk that the Lightning would move one of their first round picks if they needed to for the right player, and obviously the Lightning are after a defenseman, which makes me wonder, who's out there for them now.
Well, let me just say one thing about the Kings. I mean, and on top of it, the Kings gave him a kid named McCowan, who was their second round pick from last year's draft. So they got a number 1, and they got a kid who's 18 years old, who and we'll see how he pans out. But what this proves to me is the Kings are going all out for it right now. I mean, you've got Williams, you've got Regier, you've got Stoll on expiring contracts. They've just extended Nolan and Clifford on long-term deals. They're probably going to have to deal with Richards at the end of the year, try to either buy out or trade that contract. So, Dean Lombardi's taking the proactive, he's just going after it. He got Sekera. And now I think this team has a really good chance to go through the Western Conference and repeat as Stanley Cup champions. And, I mean, I admire that decisiveness on the part of Dean Lombardi.
Yeah. It's hard to debate that. It's hard to debate no matter who they play in the first round.
Yeah, I mean, you could have the picture of Lombardi at the main table just pushing his chips all in, because I agree.
Right.
The Kings are all in, and rightfully so. I mean, you're this close. You're built for the playoffs. I mean, that's the key thing. Like, look at the around the Eastern Conference. They're talking about, okay, Barry Trotz's mandate was to make the Capitals finally playoff ready. The mandate in Pittsburgh, get this team playoff ready. They don't know how to play in the postseason. The question about Tampa Bay is, hey, we know they're a good regular season team, but how are they going to do in the postseason? Well, guess what? What do we know about the Kings? We know they're playoff ready. We know they know how to play when it's the playoffs. And so Dean Lombardi obviously just is playing into that, knowing, hey, my team knows how to play. I just got to give it the best chance of doing it. And it's completely different. I mean, that's the thing that I think sometimes fans don't get is, knowing how to play in the postseason is completely different than knowing how to play in the regular season.
Yep. Completely, absolutely, couldn't agree more. So let's move on to the Central now, because we do have to talk about that today. We have about 20 minutes to do so before we get to the news. I want to so the Central obviously right now starts with Chicago, I think, because Chicago is the team that everybody seems to be waiting on. Now with the big Patrick Kane news that came down last night, obviously he's out for 12 weeks, basically till the conference finals roughly. This not only gives Chicago money, but makes things a little bit more, a lot more desperate for Chicago, I guess. And I think that becomes a real interesting loose cannon. Kevin, where do you think the Hawks go from here?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, I think, first of all, I mean, this should go without saying, but it needs to be said. You can't replace Kane, so right. You have to look at it as, okay, we got some money now to play with. So I think what you count on if you're Stan Bowman is that Teravainen is going to be a better player now. He's a little bit older. Maybe he could emerge and score some goals. He's a very skillful player. They called him up immediately. You bring him in. I think you're going to count on him a little bit as maybe your X factor. Like maybe, not likely, but maybe he can be the skilled guy, because he's a very skilled guy. He's a
fans in Chicago are psyched about him being called up. I mean, they've been dying for this.
Yeah, and should be. But I think you still got to add a veteran forward. So your options are limited. I mean Vermette is a guy. He's really a center, but he can play any of the forward positions. You got to look at him. They want a first-round pick. Do you really want to give that up? The guy that intrigues me is Jagr. The only problem is, the Blackhawks play a speed game. Yeah. They play a fast transition game, and he's a half-court player now. He's a pull-up, pop and hit the jumper kind of guy.
It's pretty funny.
Well, with that, they have the perfect center, because Brad Richards is just as slow as Jaromir Jagr, right, Ak?
Oh yeah. No, I mean, Jagr. The good thing about Jagr is, even though he is slow, he's incredibly efficient with what he does.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. And he also is clutch. He's a clutch type player too. And people always rip him for the Bruins playoff run that they had. Where he didn't score a goal and all that stuff. People forget that all the posts that Jagr hit in that run. I mean, there were 2 games in the Stanley Cup Finals that he could have won for the Bruins where he hit posts, that would have totally changed everybody's opinion of Jagr. He was in the Stanley Cup Finals. He was really good despite not scoring. He just was he was all over the place. Josh, you have something on the Blackhawks?
Well, I just want to point out, guys, something to keep an eye on here tonight. As not a lot of people realize, but the Blackhawks won't have to wait long to see Alex Petrovic as the Florida defenseman who hit Patrick Kane's collarbone on Tuesday night. Obviously broke it, and he's out for quite some time now. The Panthers and Hawks meet again tonight in Florida, and Petrovic actually sounds like he knows what's coming. He was quoted as saying, tonight, obviously, the Blackhawks are going to come out hard and probably seek revenge or whatnot. It's unfortunate that it happened. But, I mean, he's right. I mean, are the Blackhawks going to go after him tonight?
I think they have to, but, I also think it wasn't a dirty hit. So, I mean, but you still have to I don't know.
He'll be seeing Daniel Carcillo. And
there will definitely be an eye for an eye for a bit, but, that's...
They will go after him. To me though, that is a dangerous hit. Like I get it. I've covered this enough to understand the difference between cross-checking and boarding, and there is a fine line there and all that. And I know why they didn't suspend him. But when a guy is facing the boards like that, they all know that it doesn't take much to cause a serious injury. So you have to be careful. And I find it fascinating that players now accept the fact that you have to be responsible for your stick. Even though it's an accident, they all get that. But you don't have to be responsible when the guy is facing the boards and far away. Like, there seems to be a disconnect there. So, it was a total accident. He didn't mean to do it, but I think as a general rule, players have to be a little more careful, because they all understand how dangerous that is. They really do. I mean, it's, he had no way of protecting himself. He stumbled hard into the boards, and it didn't need to happen. I think it's even more dangerous when you're at the distance he was at. like if you're closer, to me, you just sort of slam into the boards and you take a collision. But in that case, you go awkwardly into the boards. I'm not verbalizing that very well, but
no, but I know exactly what you're saying.
It seemed like the most dangerous width between the player and the boards.
Yeah.
When he went down, so
just within the legal realm, but dangerous, and I totally agree with that.
I mean, one thing we should look out for, because there's been this pipeline between Florida and Chicago, for how long with Talon and Stan Bowman. I mean, we have the Panthers with Fleischman, with Upshaw, with a couple other UFA forwards.
Right? Kopecki's.
Yeah, I mean that might be the way that they go, and I have a feeling that the Blackhawks are not going to move any of their prospects that they have down in the AHL, like Mark McNeil or Teravainen. I know they called up, but I mean the guys who are close to making the NHL roster, and they'd probably rather move draft picks rather than some of their prospects, because those prospects in a year or so are going to have to replace guys like Patrick Sharp, who might have to be moved for salary reasons. So I think look for Florida. The Glenn Cross thing has been out there for a little while, and obviously Vermette makes a lot of sense. So
I think Glenn Cross is Chicago, and I've heard that a lot over the last couple
me
days.
too. I have as well. I mean, the only thing about Fleischman, like I agree with that. I think the Talon-Bowman connection, there has been a lot of talk between the two. Obviously, they know each other well. The only problem is, and yesterday I was reminded of this in several conversations with GMs about, you keep forgetting Fleischman's a $4.5 million cap hit.
right.
And that's fairly significant. When they're trying to deal with, under $4 million, it does make a difference. So, if Chicago, for example, was trying to get both a defenseman and a forward, that, Fleischman, is he playing at that level where you'd want to take that on? I don't know. So.
And the Hawks are definitely looking for a defenseman, and they were in on Sekera, and they were in on Sekera before the Patrick Kane thing happened, which means they had another plan in place to make that happen, which is pretty, so there's something else there. So the defense is intriguing to me that they really don't, because the defense in Chicago, a lot of people argue, is one of the best in the league, right? So
it is. Duya's been hurt, obviously, and they don't have the depth that they've had in the past, and
right.
After getting rid of Leddy, now they've been going back and forth between Eriksson and Rundblad, and after Van Riemsdyk. Actually, Trevor Van Riemsdyk played very well early in the season, but then he got hurt, and I haven't heard any kind of.
I think he's going to be back soon, Van Riemsdyk.
But he's a rookie.
But you can't really rely on that. I think there's a better. I'm going to throw this out there to the panel. I think there's a better than 50-50 chance that Jágr ends up in this division. That just in one way or the other, because three of the teams that I've heard, I haven't really heard Chicago, so two teams. I've heard two teams in this, but Chicago it is intriguing. It does make sense now. But I've heard St. Louis and I've heard Nashville with Jágr.
Yeah.
So I think that, Laviolette's had Jágr before. Obviously, it didn't end well with Jágr in Philly, but you never know with that. And St. Louis, I've heard a lot of that with Jágr. So. Matt, what are your thoughts on Jágr and in this division? Where do you see him fitting?
I gotta say, I when you started it, I was like, Nashville, load up, all in,
right.
All in. They're going all in. So why not? Although I gotta tell you, I'm really rooting for St. Louis to win that conference now, so that Chicago and Nashville play each other in the first round. Because I'd rather if the Kings are going to finish in the last wild card, I think I'd rather face St. Louis, who they seem to have their number, rather than face Nashville.
Right.
Nashville is just like they're just loading up, man, and it's like they're
crazy. They're crazy good. They took apart the Avalanche the other night watching that game. They are really good, and they're really confident. It's scary how confident. I've never seen the Predators. The Predators have been good before. Remember the year they traded for Forsberg, and they were good, but they've never looked this confident. I've watched them for years, and they've never been this cocky. There's a cockiness to the Predators right now.
I want to throw. We're talking about players. Is there any way that Chicago goes after a guy like Hartnell?
Yeah, but Columbus loves him. I don't think they would move him. That's the kind of player that they would like, though. I think that's the kind of player they would like. Maybe.
Yeah, but they're. Oh, go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, I was just going to say the cap hit. They got enough problems, and I think moving forward. You'd have to look it up. But how many years does he have left? And they need what Chicago needs more than anything else right now is flexibility to sort it all out.
That's why Vermette makes so much sense. They need a rental.
Yeah, they need, because they got to get to this summer, take a deep breath and then figure out who they can keep moving forward. I mean, they really do need some time to sort this out, because it's not easy going from $6 million to $10 million on a cap hit for Taves and Kane, even though you're happy to do it, to have them signed for as long as they do.
Yeah, Hartnell's under contract for 4 more years at 4.75, and they have Brandon Saad to sign as an RF. He's an RFA. They may get him on a bridge deal, but I think they're going to try to get him locked long term and get value for him, and that means over $5 million for a guy like him. So
I think the Blackhawks are going to need to take a lesson from what the Kings did wrong this year when the Kings didn't buy out Mike Richards, which is what they needed to do. And I think the Kings are going to have to move Patrick Sharp out. And it's not that I like Patrick Sharp just like I like Mike Richards, but there's a diminishing returns point on Patrick Sharp, and he's still got a couple good years left, but they have to do it before they can't do it. Put it that way. They're going to be in that spot. It feels like. That's just my opinion, but so Jágr, the Blues, and what do you think of that? What do you think, Jágr, the Blues Predators, Mike?
I think he fits better with the Predators, because I think the Predators still need another offensive piece. I mean, everything that I've heard says St. Louis still wants to add something, and they have the room to do it. But the question is what, and the question is, are they willing to take somebody who has term left in their deal, or are they going in the rent-a-player market?
He's going to be a big player. That's what I was told. Hitchcock wants a big player. Now, Jágr's big. Jágr's incredibly strong. Incredibly strong. Really, really, still shields the puck better than anybody in the NHL, which is astounding at his age. But yeah, it's going to be a big player. So when you look at around the big, like Cashin would have been a good fit, but I think he's not going anywhere. That's the kind of player they want.
Yeah, it's definitely not going to be Chris Stewart. He already burned his bridges in St. Louis.
Yeah, he's not going back to St. Louis, right? So
I agree. It probably be somebody who fits in their top 9 rather than a top 6 guy. I mean, similar to what they did last year with Steve Ott at the deadline, get an aggressive player, somebody with experience who can help them and provide a little depth. I think they have enough offense. My question with St. Louis, and I know I'm in the minority, is the goaltending.
You're not in the minority. I think it's still a fair question, right? I mean, moving forward, that's still a question. It's until they show that they can get good goaltending in the playoffs, that's going to be the issue. And every time right now when the Blues have one slightly bad game of goaltending, everybody goes nuts in St. Louis about this, because they've been through this. They've lived this game. They've been BD warned. If you have good goaltending, you're not going to win the playoffs. So.
But
yeah, I think
one thing I think, and Kevin can provide more info on this because he knows the man better than I do. I think David Poile proved with the deal that he made with Toronto that he, in a sense, is all in. He sees the opportunity. He's got Pekka Rinne playing great. He's got Shea Weber. Their defense is great. He added guys like Ribeiro in the offseason. Forsberg's having a good year. He sees the opportunity here, and now with Kane out for most of the playoffs, the road is open for Nashville to go deep in the playoffs. I mean, it doesn't make any sense for him to hold back, and if he sees the opportunity to get one player who can make a difference, I think he'll go for it.
Do you think so, Gav?
Well, I'm kind of torn because he has been an aggressive general manager. That's been his history. I did a column on that just recently where I pointed out, though he's cast as a very conservative GM. In fact, he's been one of the more aggressive ones. You look at his history, trading for Forsberg, signing Paul Kariya, even in the offseason he acquired James Neal for Hornquist. Going back to his Washington days, he turned the franchise around with the big Langway trade. He's always been aggressive. On the other hand, he did say, publicly, and I find David Poile to be a man of his word, that he would be likely putting his feet up on trade deadline day, that he was very happy. He was concerned about his chemistry. He liked his chemistry. The only caveat is I've heard that they would like to add some toughness. Not a tough guy, not a fighter, but a guy who could come in and play and do some banging, and with a little bit of size to measure up against some of the bigger teams. But I don't disagree with Mike. I mean, the other thing about David is he does play his cards close to his vest. You never can be sure what he's going to do. So I wouldn't put anything past him. Like, even though he has said he won't do, and he probably isn't likely to do anything more because he likes everything, I agree with Mike that he's close enough to where if he saw somebody undervalued in the marketplace and he could get the go-ahead, I mean, they're not a cap team either. They're a budget team. If he could get clearance, then I think he would go for it.
Yeah, I mean, who's out? I mean, that's a tough one to think about who's out there for them, but yeah.
There's really nobody that fits that mold.
There really is no one that fits the mold, and I agree. Vermette doesn't. That's going to be a first-round pick. They've already given up their first-round pick, so. To me, now Minnesota's a good team to look at too. They have also been very aggressive at trade deadlines recently. They already made one deal for Bergenheim. I don't think they're done. I talked to somebody there, and they're not done. So they're still going to make another move. They love to get, Vermette is the kind of player that the Wild would go hard for. I don't know that they're going to go hard for Vermette, but they always kind of surprise you. They're the team that they sneak. They're very sneaky. Fletcher's very sneaky GM. He comes in at the last minute on things sometimes, and we'll steal a player. What have you heard in terms of them, Kev? Anything interesting?
Well, I actually spoke to Chuck Fletcher on the record, and he told me that he expected to try to improve their depth. That was right before he made the Bergenheim trade.
Right.
And he said that, and he listed all the injuries he's had, and he said at this time of year, you have to have enough players, and he didn't feel that they had enough because of all the injuries they've gone through. So I do expect them to make another move. They've already made clearly the best trade thus far. The Dubnyk trade has, no team has gotten the return that they've gotten for that trade. I mean, he's really changed their team. Their save percentage was below 9. Before that trade, ranked 29th out of 30 teams, and he's at 935 since that trade. So, I mean, he has had such a significant impact on that team, and they gave up a third-round pick for him. So, Fletcher's already hit it out of the park. In my early rankings, I have the Minnesota Wild as number 1 in terms of getting the value out of their trades. I don't even think you can't even argue that they've gotten the best player thus far.
I agree.
Well, I'd argue a little bit and say David Perron has really helped Pittsburgh out there. That was a terrific deal for them.
Yeah, well, I don't, again, it's a great deal, and they're in my ranking. But the Wild were like 9 points out. Now they're in a playoff spot, and they just have made such a significant upgrade at that position. And the only case you can make, Perron. They did get a guy that can play with Crosby, and he's a lot feistier than people think he is. But it is hard to come up with a player that's had the impact that Dubnyk has had, and to get him. And Fletcher even admitted, by the way, which I'm writing about tomorrow. I was talking about, you had other options, and he said, I really didn't. I tried to give him credit for looking at the Buffalo group and. The 2 goalies, because they were both still there at the time, and he had Cam Ward and a few others. But he said, I really didn't have those kind of options. It was kind of Dubnyk or bust. He went with Dubnyk, and he knew him reasonably well, and it's really paid off.
Just got a text from a source, guys, just this instant that said the Hawks will be in on Kimmo Timonen. He was told, which that makes sense. That could make sense. That now they have the money to do it. Before, that was the player that probably... Kimmo's not expensive, but I don't know. How about Mike Brew? I have something interesting in the chat room. I would love to see Jordan Tutu go back to the Predators. That would be fantastic. Just like that. That would be...
That's a great thought. That's a... Yeah.
Why not? That's the kind of... They could use that kind of a player. He comes in there, he's a spark plug, a fourth-line guy.
And he can play. That's what they want. They want a guy who can play.
Right. And so popular in that city.
What about Rich Kloon? Is Rich Kloon just done?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I haven't heard much about Richmond at all, actually.
Hey, speaking of Timonen, I think something to watch is to see Timonen's supposed to play on Saturday. So I wonder if there's going to be any Chicago Blackhawks scouts at the game on Saturday.
We'll find out.
The other, just to cover the other teams in the division quickly here, Eck. Because Dallas, the only thing that I see from them is if they think that they're out of it, you still have Eric Cole and you have Horkoff, who are UFAs. The problem is their cap hits are really high, so I'm not sure how much interest they're going to get in those guys. In Colorado, all the talk with them has been Ryan O'Reilly, and I don't perceive, Kevin, I don't think that move is going to happen before Monday. I think that's a summer move, if anything.
I'm with you 100% on that. In fact, I think they've pretty much said that in Colorado that they want to make an effort this summer, so I don't see that as well. And I agree with you on both counts, Nelson.
Yeah. I did hear Anaheim had some interest in Danny Briere about a week ago. I don't know what it's a player you can pick up, obviously a playoff guy, so that's a possibility. But I wouldn't make it a big possibility, but it's out there. Go, Josh. What do you got?
Yeah, guys. Further to Ryan O'Reilly, this might pour some cold water over those rumors of him finally being dealt. Patrick Waugh had some quotes about an hour ago on the possibility of Ryan O'Reilly being traded. And his quotes were, "I have a lot of confidence in Ryan O'Reilly. I'd be surprised if we trade him. Joe Sakic has spoken to O'Reilly's agent. We would love to have him as an AB for a long time."
Yeah, dream on.
No, they want him there, and it's not impossible. I mean, the question is that Ryan O'Reilly is that he is. I honestly see. This is the funny thing. I value Ryan O'Reilly above Matt Duchene, and most people would disagree with that. But I honestly think Ryan O'Reilly is a better all-around player than Matt Duchene.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just been money in Colorado. I don't think he has anything against the Avalanche.
But why I bring up the Matt Duchene thing is I think the Matt Duchene thing plays into it. Is that the Avalanche are valuing him above it, right? They're not going to pay Ryan O'Reilly as much as they're paying Matt Duchene.
Yeah, there's something to that, but no.
What's with Matt Duchene this year? He's not having the best year.
Yeah, he wasn't very good last year either. People forget this. Like he was okay last year, even when they were really good. I remember when Colorado came to town, sitting next to Adrian Dater, and he had said, "Do you realize Matt Duchene hasn't scored in 20 games?" And I said, I mean, there was a point last year in the beginning of the year where Matt Duchene was terrible. I mean, the
other factors with O'Reilly is A, he's a pending UFA at the end of next year, and B, they have to pay Nathan MacKinnon, and I don't think that they're gonna do the bridge deal situation with MacKinnon. I think they're gonna probably try to get him signed as a long-term deal to get better value, and if that's the case, then I think they have to trade O'Reilly. I mean, if they want to pay if they want to pay Ryan O'Reilly $7 million a year, pay him more than Matt Duchene, I think he'll sign with Colorado. I just have not seen one scintilla of evidence that they have any desire to sign him for $1 more than Matt Duchene.
And I agree, and they need to get a defenseman. They have priorities they have to handle here. And MacKinnon really throws a wrench. And let's go to news. Josh, what do you got today?
Guys, lots of stuff going on. I mentioned Kimmo Timonen set to return on Saturday for the Flyers. Steve Mason also appears ready, so that's definitely some great news for Philadelphia, adding two players. It's like they made a trade. But anyway.
It is, especially with Kimmo.
Exactly. Defensemen, we talked about this show, how there aren't many left. And there's a lot of teams that want him. Well, you might be adding the Calgary Flames to that list. Mark Giordano had a bad injury last night. They're not saying a whole lot. According to Randy Sportak, is that right, Sportak?
Yeah.
The Calgary Sun. Flames head coach Bob Hartley said Giordano will be evaluated tomorrow. But that would be a huge loss for the Flames, as he, it's
a devastating injury.
Defenseman and the captain. So.
And I'm not going out on a limb here. If Giordano's out for any long term, forget Calgary adding anything at the deadline, because I think their playoff chances are dead in the water.
I mean, real quick here, poll between the three of you guys. The most devastating injury, if Giordano's, assuming Giordano's hurt for long term, Giordano, Kane, or Ryan Miller. What do you think, Mike? Give me which would be the most devastating injury with those three.
The least devastating is Ryan Miller, because they have Lack and Markstrom. I would say Kane is the most.
Yeah. Kane's the most. Matt, you agree with that?
Yeah.
See, I'm going to go with Giordano only because they just have less. The Blackhawks still have a great number of good players, but I know what you're saying. He's leading scorer in the league. It's hard to argue with your point. I just think that.
And it's your captain too, Kevin.
Yeah. Without Giordano, they're just not even remotely the same team. Where the Blackhawks are still, a pretty decent team without Kane.
Yeah, the Blackhawks are still a playoff team, but Kane wins them playoff games and playoffs.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
He's the one who wins.
I respect the Kane. I'm just
Oh yeah. No, I agree. It's a tough call. That's why I was asking Josh.
Yeah.
You guys just talked about Ryan Miller. It became official last night. Jim Benning confirming to TSN 1040 that the veteran starting goalie expected to miss 4 to 6 weeks, which had been previously reported with a sprained knee. So still, yeah, Eddie Lack is there, and Markstrom is there.
Not as bad as it could have been, but
yeah. Other injury news: Rafi Torres had surgery today to put a new ACL from a cadaver. He is expected to be back by training camp, per Doug Wilson. Surgery was delayed to make sure Torres did not have any further infections. Apparently he had some infections in the leg, and it was an ongoing issue, but they wanted to make sure that was all in the clear before he had that done, so he'll be back by training camp next year.
Okay.
And it makes you wonder, Rafi Torres, a lot of people have, negative thoughts about him from what he's done in the past, but a lot of people view him as a big-time locker room guy. Could he be the reason why the Sharks haven't been as good this year, because he's not there in the locker room?
I think he's a factor. I think he's a bigger factor than people probably credit. I do think he's a locker room guy, and I also think he's a spark plug. And then he also gives the Sharks some bite, which is a terrible pun, but actually the truth, he does give the Sharks some bite because they don't have a whole lot of bite sometimes, and Torres does give him that. So, Josh, continue. Sorry.
Okay, the Ducks today announcing goaltender Ilya Bryzgalov will return to his family home in Philadelphia, not to play
at Home Depot, I promise.
Not to play for the Flyers. He's going to not play for the remainder of the year. Bryzgalov was assigned Norfolk on February the 24th, made the decision after discussing the situation with his family and agent Rich Winter. Bryzgalov and Ducks executive VP GM Bob Murray made the following comments. This is Bryzgalov. Gotta love when Bryzgalov speaks to the media. At the beginning of the NHL season, I spent all my time with my wife and my children. I drove my son and daughter to their practice and games and enjoyed life. I had no plans to return to the NHL this season until the Ducks reached out to my agent, Rich Winter. I agreed to return because of my respect for the Ducks organization, the quality of the team they had assembled, and my long-term relationship with Bob Murray and the team. Given the way things have worked out, I have decided to return home to be with my wife and children who did not move with me to Anaheim. It's not the way I had hoped things would work out, but when you can return to a family you love, you live, or could life be any better?
That's good.
Wonderful life.
Yeah.
Happy for him. I guess it does. Is he retiring? It sounds like he's retiring, but maybe not. And continue. Sorry, go on.
Maybe a homer will call him. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Because I'm also hanging out at my house waiting for an NHL team to call, that's not happening. So just
there you go. There's a few rumors out there, otherwise that have been circulating around Twitter today. You may recall in January there was speculation the Rangers could be interested in getting Mike Santorelli out of Toronto to play third-line center for the Blue Shirts. That, of course, never happened. Was traded to Nashville. But might the Leafs have another center for the Rangers to consider? According to NBC TSN insider Bob McKenzie, the answer is yes, and that name is Tyler Bozak. While McKenzie acknowledges would not be an easy deal to do because of the financial implications, Bozak is signed through the 2017-18 season with $4.2 million cap hit. There's little doubt the 28-year-old is available given the Leafs situation, so that might be something to look into with the Rangers.
Yeah. I think it's a terrible idea for the Rangers.
I talked about this in my column today. The Rangers are looking for a center who can win faceoffs. Bozak is very good at winning faceoffs.
Yeah.
They also have the situation like they did last year with Ryan Callahan with Zuccarello as a pending UFA.
Zuccarello, that's the whole point. That's why I think it's a terrible idea. You got to sign him. You got to get him.
But the thing is, he supposedly is looking for over $5 million. If they think that they can't sign him, like they thought that they couldn't sign Callahan, what they might do is move Zuccarello out and get somebody with a salary that is already determined. Make that deal, and then they, because if they can fit $4.2 million if they move Zuccarello. If they don't move him, then it's strictly, they're letting Zuccarello walk.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Yeah, I haven't published my my preview today, but I also addressed the Bozak thing because I've heard that as well. And,
okay.
I've got Bozak as with talks about him heating up, and basically I was told yesterday that no one likes the length of the contract because they like flexibility, but $4 million or just over $4 million is a pretty good number for a reliable center.
Yeah, that's for sure. All right, Josh, what else you got?
Yes, let's continue about other speculation. Interesting nugget here from NHL scribe and Hockey Hall of Famer Jim Matheson, per the Edmonton Journal. The Canadiens convey Petrie to play with Alexei Emelin on a second defense pair in the wide open East, where there is no clear-cut cup contender threat. They may not want to deal their top young defenseman, Nathan Beaulieu, or Jared Tenorti in any deal for Petrie, but they reportedly have offered their 2013 first-round pick, winger Michael McCarron, to the Coyotes for a shutdown defenseman, Zebnik Mihalik.
Yeah.
Mihalik.
They're not moving. They're not moving Beaulieu. Beaulieu's playing 20 to 25 minutes a night. He's played a lot better this year. He's really growing into as a top 4 defenseman. They're not moving him for anything.
I second that. That's not even a possibility.
Yeah, no, I agree with that too.
Okay. A couple of interesting quotes here today, guys. I want to pass these on. Ken Hitchcock on facing the Jets 4 times down the stretch. We might need 30 players by the end. We'll see. It'll be like a mini playoff. 4 times they're playing the Jets down the stretch. That's quite interesting.
That's a lot of times to play the Jets.
And comment, I don't know if you guys saw the tussle between the Caps and the Penguins last night. They were going at it pretty good. I think it was Tom Wilson that, I don't know if you heard about this, but Tom Wilson apparently ran into Evgeny Malkin during warm-ups.
I heard about this last night, yeah.
That seemed to not sit well with the Penguins faithful. And Steve Downey after the game on Tom Wilson, he's a young kid, he'll learn.
I still want those two.
That's from Steve Downey?
Yeah.
All right, sorry, continue.
I still want those 2 teams to meet in the first round of the playoffs.
Absolutely.
I never thought I did not expect that we were at the point where Steve Downey would be giving such kinds of advice to people, but that's okay.
What's the saying? Don't throw stones. Don't throw
Downey,
stones.
a veteran sage, telling he'll learn how not to.
Yes, that calming influence. Steve Downey and Maxime Lapierre. There you go.
Exactly.
Don't throw stones, guys.
Pot kettle black.
Yeah, a little bit, exactly. Holy moly. I guess the other side of it, when Steve Downey tells you you're not mature, he really needs to
People listen.
Lastly, Ek, do you have that link? I wanted to show everybody.
Yes.
Wanted to show everyone. I think I can't remember a year where there were so many draft picks like that changed hands. I mean, if you look at the draft coming up in June, there's a lot of picks that have been traded, and ESPN did basically a big graph on it, and it's quite intriguing to see how many different picks are owned by what team, because I wouldn't know this unless this was created.
Yeah, I'll show you this here. So there's just a little bit of it here. I'll show you real quick. You definitely check this out on ESPN. It is really intriguing. Here it is that's not it.
Oh no, that's
sorry. That's the draft simulator. Here it is. Okay, so yeah, you can see here that it just shows you all the things in parentheses are draft picks that have been changed. Have changed from one side to the other. So there are tons.
There are multiple first teams have this year. I didn't realize that many first round picks were dealt.
Tampa, Edmonton, Buffalo, and Toronto.
Yeah, no, it's pretty crazy.
And now Carolina.
Yeah, possibly, depending on what happens. But most likely. All right, so let's do the draft simulator. All right, and here we go. So, running the lottery simulator. I am doing it now as we speak. And the winner today is... Hold on.
Suspense.
The suspense is killing me. Wait a second. Oh, man, I lost it. Sorry. Coming back.
Drum roll again.
Holy moly. Winner today is the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Oh. No wonder why it took a while. It needed a few minutes to really register that it was the Leafs.
Of course, conspiracy theorists would say I plotted it this way, but I did not. I just couldn't find it. I lost my page. So, but there
Is
it
that
is.
beer you're cracking open there, Mike?
Well, of course, this is what This would really be interesting and definitely keep us in business throughout 2016. So we're pulling for it.
The Toronto media would consider this a good story.
And I guess the rest of Canada would definitely claim it was fixed. So we have plenty to talk about if that happens later.
What is that, like Ewing to the Knicks?
Oh, yeah. I want to do a story on this. Has anyone done this, Kevin? You could do this. They would let you do it. They wouldn't let me do it. What you need to do is someone needs to go behind the scenes and see how this is done. Is it just a computer screen like I'm doing here? Is it a ping pong ball machine? What exactly is the process? How does this happen? Do you know?
Yeah, it's scary to get Bettman going, how do we help the league out?
No, it's not. So what's the actual...
What, that is a good story. I will look into that.
Look into doing that, because especially with what's going on, people are really interested in how exactly this plays out. I mean, it's got to be more than this, right? Or is it not? I mean, is it just this simple?
No, I don't think so. I think
some programmer from Toronto will make sure that it ends up the way.
Do they hire some kind of impartial people? There must be people who watch over this. There must be something like
Ernst and Young.
Ernst and Young, yeah.
Do they? They do. So there isn't actual. We know that,
no,
right?
I don't have any idea. I just
Because if there isn't, that's pretty crazy, right? There has to be somebody they have to have some kind of.
Well, they do hire an independent accounting firm to validate the voting for the NHL award. So I would assume they would do it for the lottery as well.
Yeah, yes, I wonder if they do.
But there could always be the human element, and Matt probably knows this. Back in the day during the Academy Awards, it's rumored that Jack Palance opened up the Best Supporting Actress envelope and named Marissa Tomei for My Cousin Vinny, and she wasn't the name on there, and he did it just to piss off the Academy because he had been denied an Oscar for so many years. So you never know what's going to happen, Eck.
Wow, did she actually get the award, or did they change it?
No.
She got the award.
She got the award?
There was rumor. There was rumor, but it's been vehemently denied over the years.
Yeah, it might
be always be denied, yeah.
But what the hell?
Well, all I can tell you is this. The Hockey Buzz Draft Lottery Simulator is completely legit. And if anybody wants to do a story on how I press refresh, they're welcome to come over, because that's what I do. All right, guys, that's all the time we have for today. Without the buzz, it is just hockey. I've got a rumor blog to write and some charts to update. Oh, and before I go, gosh, I almost forgot. We have a new domain that we started called NHLCapspace.com. And if you're missing on CapGeek, if you go to NHLCapspace.com, you'll get our version of CapGeek. And it's pretty cool, and this is the time of year where I know I'm missing CapGeek. Everybody's missing CapGeek, so go to NHLCapspace.com. That's NHLCapspace.com. NHLCapspace.com.
What was that, Eck?
That number domain again is NHLCapspace.com. And I don't know why that was available, so I feel like we got lucky. But NHLCapspace.com was available, and we made it NHLCapspace.com. So go check it out at a computer near you. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. Talk to you soon. See you tomorrow.